Hi family, my name is Sibu. Thank you so much for clicking this video and visiting my channel. I am a South African born 20-something-year-old who loves the Lord, who loves her family and who loves her friends and who loves the idea of community. And that's what I really do hope that we'll be able to build through this channel and just talk about the Lord. Like, let's just talk about the Lord. I started this channel a couple of years ago, and the idea was just to have it as a base for my vlogs, just to kind of throw my vlogs in because I really enjoyed making vlogs. And things changed. I was on and off a little bit from YouTube, and the Lord unctioned me to come back, and He said, "You know what? Go speak about me." He said, "Go speak about me," and I'm hoping that we'd be able to learn something from this video and all the others that will come, and that we'll be able to share about where the Lord has us and where He wants us to be, and most of all, that He will get all the glory for everything that happens from now moving forward. Yeah, so let's get into the video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all the nice things, and let's grow together. Okay, so a couple of months ago, maybe a year ago to the day, the Lord had, or rather I asked, I said, what season do you want me to go into? What is this going to be? What is my life? What are we doing with this life? And the one thing that I heard and felt Him saying deeply was yield. And yield was tough. I went and I did my search, and there's different definitions for yield, and the one that I felt like He was calling me to the most was surrender. And yeah, it was tricky, it was tough. I'm a planner. I like to have things, all my ducks in a row and controlled, and my life has always been planned for by me. I guess since I was in first, second grade, I was like, I know what I want to do from grade 1. And life has not always panned out the way that I had wanted it to. And that came with a lot of grieving for what I thought my life would be. And with all of that comes then the notion that you never really had control to begin with. That was just an illusion, that you are in the hands of the potter, and as clay you yield, and that's what we need to do. And yeah, so for the past couple of months I've been reading and diving into Exodus, and the way things have kind of come together in such an amazing way has been fun. It was fun just to watch and to even look now in retrospect and say, that's why. Because I just started reading Exodus with a friend of mine, and the lessons that you learn from it are then now connected even to the word that God spoke to me about yielding. So that was really fun, and I just want to break down a little bit of that, and for us to just go through the notion of yielding, and for me to share what I've learned, and for you to also share with me what season you're in. Head over to the comment section. Let's have a chit chat. Okay, so I think today, if I was to title it, would be if you want to know when to yield, or when to yield, maybe, yeah, when to yield. That's what I would title this video. Like I said, I've been breaking down the Exodus, the book of Exodus, and the Israelites. And the funny thing about the Israelites is, when you're reading the Exodus from Egypt, is at some point you'll relate to them, because they're fearful. At some point you'll get annoyed with them, and because now they're not trusting, and don't they know that God can keep them? Don't they know God delivers them? Because we have the privilege of knowing how it ends. But today I think I want us to kind of walk with them in the journey, and maybe also draw parallels with our own lives with them, and try and have a bit more grace to them. This is for me, mainly for me to have grace to the Israelites. And I guess the point that we are going to get them at is like chapter 14, where they've now seen all the amazing things that God has done in the plagues and getting them out of Egypt, and they're now in the wilderness, and God leads them to a place that makes no sense to them. That sounds familiar. And the funny thing also, I think, about it is how I'm only realizing how I can relate to them so much. In chapter 14, it starts off with, now the Lord spoke to Moses saying, and in the couple of chapters prior to that, I think for the past 7 to 9 chapters, It all starts with, now the Lord said to Moses, and the Lord was saying to Moses, and the Lord spoke to Moses. And, I love how God was taking care of them like his kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, I will speak to you, I will speak life over you, I will command you, and all you have to do is obey. And that is kind of tricky to do, as we have seen with them. The first, I think, uh, thing that you can gather from your life and your season that you're in is when to yield is when the Lord has been speaking to you. Because one thing the Lord will do is to speak, and all we need to do is always have our ears attentive and listening and hearing what He has to say to us. The Lord will speak, number one. When to yield is when you hear the Lord speak. And that speaking is not dependent on whether we hear Him or not, whether we obey Him or not. The Lord will speak. That's number one, I think. And the second one is just from chapter 14. We find the Lord leading the Israelites to a place that feels like they're kind of going back. It feels like they're being delayed. It feels like, but we know where we're supposed to be. And now you are leading us into what feels like the middle of nowhere, into a place that for us doesn't feel like it's positioning us for a miracle, but it feels like we're being delayed. So second one could be when to know, or how you know when to yield is when you feel delayed, is when you feel stuck, is when you feel like I don't know where God has me. I feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere. And many a times it's where He's positioning you for. It's a place that maybe doesn't make sense to you, but it's exactly where He needs you to be. Just like with the Israelites, He now leads them to a place that's right in front of the Red Sea, but it's kind of now coming back on their journey that they were already going, to Canaan. Leads them to a place that's in front of the ocean, and or rather the sea. I do not really have context on how big or what it looked like, what it smelled like. But I can imagine them being there and having to now camp there where God says they must camp. And now they are experiencing and being shown this big obstacle that they maybe didn't even see it was an obstacle to begin with. And they are interacting with the obstacle. God wants them in front of this Red Sea so they can see and hear and, experience, whether it be the birds flying over it, whether it's the fish that they can see, whatever creatures are in the water, it's the waves, if there are waves that are crashing, they hear and they experience this obstacle. And I heard someone say at one point that sometimes God will let you sit with your obstacle for what may feel like an extended amount of time to you, just so that you know that when He removes it, it could only be Him, because now after sitting with the Red Sea, they know now that it's a real sea. It's not like they got there seconds before and then the sea opened up. They know it's a Red Sea. They are now becoming familiarized with the obstacle in front of them. And maybe third one could be when to know when to yield is when you've been in a situation for a while and it feels stagnant. It feels like, I don't know, with Agnangela, there's no bridge, for us to go over. How are we going to do this? And sometimes God familiarizes with it so that we can know that when we're over it, through it, when we're over to the point where He has called us to, that we know it could only have been Him. So He calls them to this point, and the Israelites, being the Israelites, at some point they start to complain, because now they're seeing like the enemy is pulling through. Okay, they're coming and they're throwing their toys on the floor, and they say, "Didn't we have graves really, like in Egypt? Didn't we we could have made something of ourselves, or at least died, knowing that we are in a place where we're familiar with it, okay, where we're slaves, we know our jobs, although they were crying out to the Lord. I think for them it became a place of familiarity. Okay, so in chapter 14:11 they say, then they said to Moses, these are the Egyptians, because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you so dealt with us to bring us up out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. So what God was trying to take them out of, they thought was better. And like I said, sometimes we do relate to them and we say, maybe there was a point in my life where I may have thought the places where God has taken me out of, the sin that God has taken me out of, was way better than living this faith walk, and that's not true. Okay. And then Moses goes and tries to encourage the children of Israelites, and they're crying, and they're, as a good leader should. He tells them, listen, don't be afraid, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see again no more forever. This is verse 13 of chapter 14. And verse 14 says, the Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. That's all you need to do. Hold your peace. And what I love is I can just imagine them still crying out, even after they've heard everything that Moses is saying. They're still like, but still, you don't know where we come from. You should have just left us. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. Another thing that God often does is put us in situations where we have cried, and maybe it even feels like he's just been quiet, not listening to our cries. But oftentimes we must go back to say, what was the last thing that God said to us? And are we obeying that last thing? Possibly the next thing that can, come up in your life that you feel it could be a little spark to show that I should be in my yielding season, is God calling you to obey. God sometimes pushing you to obey. Sometimes you're in this space, like I said, for a while, in this obstacle, and it feels stuck and it feels unfamiliar. It feels like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. Why did I even take this job? It has nothing to do with my career. I don't know where I am. Why am I in this town? It doesn't make sense. But oftentimes it's because the last thing that you heard God say was for you to be there. So you need to remember what God has said to you before and move in obedience. So yielding is not only about letting go and surrendering, but it's also moving in obedience. That when you have seen all these things that are pushing you to your yielding season, remember to obey. Remember that at the end of the day, obedience is sacrifice, and it's better than sacrifice. We'll get into Abraham maybe in a couple of videos also. I think he's also one of my favorite characters and people in the Bible that also show me that what it means to yield, and what worship and what sacrifice is, and what obedience is. So that was kind of what I wanted us to break down, and for us to kind of be in the moment where the Israelites are just before the big miracle happens. Because sometimes in our lives we feel stuck, we feel like we don't understand where we are, and it may just be a place where it's just before the miracle, where it's just before God does something, where it's just before God shows you his glory, and for everyone to see the amazing things that he's going to do in your life. Thereafter, God commands Moses to do a couple of things: to lift up his rod and to stretch out his hand over the sea and divide it, right? And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. That's the word of the Lord. And he says, I will indeed harden the hearts of Pharaoh, and they shall follow them. So I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his army, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. So to close off this video, know that when you are in your season of yielding, where it feels like it doesn't make sense, where it feels like God is doing something, but I'm in a position that I don't know if he can actually do anything with my life where it is. Maybe where you feel like giving up and feeling like, where I was is better than this, what I am going through. Know that at the end of the day, everything is just so that God can have the glory, so God can have the honor, so that the people around you can see in your life that God has done it for you. And it's going to happen in a way that only God, it could only have been God. People can only say, that one, that was a God miracle. And it's going to be tough, I think, waiting on the Lord and understanding and yielding and obeying in him in the season. But we'll continue to do it, for we know that he is faithful, that he is the maker of the heavens and the earth, that nothing is too hard for the Lord, even in this yielding season. So we'll carry on with more videos. come along with me. Let's continue to yield and grow together. Thank you. Bye.